some people at US Soccer, you're probably a little bit nervous about the way things are going. Because I do think there's going to come a time when the US is not, if not struggling to qualify for a World Cup, then it's less of an, okay, we're going to get to the World Cup, but how's the knockout round going to go?
Let's move on to the next subject, because we have to talk about the UEFA Women's Champions League. Barcelona played against Wolfsburg at Camp Nou. Is it Camp Nou or Camp Nou? I never know how to say it exactly.
It's one of those. And sometimes it's new camp. Sometimes new comes before camp. It gets very confusing.
Because of the Catalan or whatever. But 91,648 people at this match. It's the most attended women's soccer match. And I wanted to talk about this because obviously this is an incredible number and quite a record. And we've seen this. La Liga has been pretty incredible. We see this with like Atletico Madrid. There's a couple teams that are really, really getting some strong support. But the reason I bring this up, even though it's European based, and this is the American Soccer Show, is that people have been saying that this is that Barcelona is now like, basically, if you had Barcelona play against the U.S. women's national team, that Barcelona would dominate them and they would win. They're saying that they would beat the U.S. women's national team. But the issue here, La Liga, the level of play is not as high as like NWSL. So they absolutely dominate. They pretty much they dominate their league, but they're also very dominant in Champions League. And I don't know if you've seen any of these games, but Barcelona, I mean, they look like Xavi, Iniesta, Messi. Barcelona, their style of play is so not even similar to the men's game now, but the men's game then. They are just so much better than some of the other teams in La Liga, and I think it says more about La Liga than it does about how good Barcelona are, even though they are very good. Because their goal differentials like 112, like last season. I don't know if you saw this. They're too good, but this idea that the Europeans, especially a team like Barcelona, are catching up to the U.S. women's national team. What do you think about that narrative?
I mean, I'm not trying to be like stick in the mud, but isn't that a little bit like because Man City might win the title being like, Man City are catching up to Brazil better watch out? Like, to me, it's two different things. I get the idea behind it is that Europe is catching up to the U.S. women's national team, and that is factual. That is definitely the case. I think NWSL should be really, really worried. I don't know if the U.S. should be quite yet, but I think NWSL has to look at, I mean, what were the stories about NWSL last year? It's not the players' fault, but like we know what the dominant headlines were, and it was not positive stuff. And if you are a player who's contemplating your next move, I think NWSL has a little bit of work to do to kind of restore like the league's good name a little bit and to make sure that they're doing enough to protect the players. And again, that's not a shot at the players. It's not a shot at the people the fans even, but I think the league should definitely be worried because it has long been the case that women's soccer is wildly underfunded. And what I have always believed is that U.S. soccer, because of Title IX, because of other like policy initiatives, has just put more money into the women's game than other federations, and it's given the U.S. a huge head start. But it does not take an insane amount of money to build a very good team in women's soccer. And that's not a shot at the league. It's a shot at the people who haven't been doing that yet. It's why Lyon have been so good for so long and why PSG are able to balance them now. It's you put a little bit of money into it. You're paying players in ways that they wouldn't otherwise be able to be paid to make that money. Yeah. And they're going to go there. And that's what's going to keep happening. And now you've got 90,000 people showing up for games. I think it's a necessary thing because we're on our... NWSL has been around for a while, don't get me wrong, but that's what, the third, fourth professional women's league in this country. And there was a time when it was like, is there ever going to be one that can stick around? And it feels like now we're moving towards like, yeah, there's going to be a bunch and Europe is going to be really good and the Champions League is going to be super strong. And I think NWSL probably is pretty nervous about that one. And maybe that will require them to start spending a little bit more and kind of keeping some of that cachet. I hope it's not, their solution isn't just make it even harder for Americans to go play abroad, which is a thing that I think they've maybe done a little bit in the past, and I hope they don't do this time, because it then hampers development, and I think that's a thing that's sorely needed. I do wonder, sorry to go really long with this one, I genuinely don't know, and I now want to do some research to find out if the Barcelona, like on the women's academy side, first of all, if they have a women's academy, again, I apologize for not knowing.
They do.
But if they do, is it the La Masia thing of we're playing the same style, everybody learns how to play the way we want to play, and so we're bringing through these players who are steeped in that tradition, and that's why they look the way you would expect a Barcelona team to look. That would also make me very, very nervous if I were an NWSL team, because having a really strong academy is a way to not have to spend a ton of money, but still have a really good team, and it doesn't seem like NWSL has done enough of either of those yet.
Yeah, so Alexis and I, we hosted, we were the in-stadium announcers at the at the ICC Futures. So it was basically boys and girls. It was like U14, U15, something like that. And clubs from all over the country, and from a couple from Europe. PSG were there, Real Madrid were there, boys and girls. But Barcelona, boys and girls were there, and Barcelona ended up winning the women, or the girls. They won their division. And so we're getting to see them play, and they played against an American, I think it was PDA, which is like the New Jersey-based academy. And Barcelona, even these girls that were like 13, 14 years old, I was watching them, I'm like, this is Barcelona. I can't comprehend how these young girls are playing the exact same way and have a very similar tactical or technical ability as you know, boys and even the girls 10 years older than them or whatever. They're just so incredibly accomplished, and it really didn't look like it had the old trope of like the Americans are more athletic and are playing harder, but they just couldn't control the ball as well as these kids. And you're sort of seeing that when it comes to whatever the tactical level of the game in women's La Liga has not gotten to every other club. Like, Barcelona, Real Madrid. There's a couple that are Atletico, especially. They're there.
Wait, you're telling me La Liga is dominated by Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Atleti to a lesser extent? No way. I cannot believe that.
It was really like pretty incredible. But I still think so. The theory I have here, you know, the league I watch the most, as far as, you know, I watch NWSL and then Women's Super League in England. I watch that from time to time on ATA football. I don't know if you know them. But I watch. There's something to me, what I get frustrated in NWSL matches, I kind of feel like I wish there were more goals, but I think there is but I think that sort of says why NWSL is a tougher league. I think it's just tougher to score in NWSL. I think the defenders are a bit better, and I think there's more parity between the teams. In a Women's Super League, there's a couple really good teams, and then you've seen like Arsenal and Vivian Miedema, you know, could score like a hat trick every other game. And then, I think if Miedema played in NWSL, I don't think there wouldn't be nearly results like that. So it's. I still think the European leagues are a little bit weaker than NWSL. It would be, I think it's still good for the American player to like get a different experience playing in another country or playing in one of these other leagues, because I think the resources for them, it's similar to like how WNBA players, even though it sucks that they have to do this, but they go play in Russia or whatever.
Yeah, well,
and that's a bit of a problem. That's a big problem now.
Is she still in jail?
Yeah, Brittany Griner is still in jail in Russia, which is an absolute nightmare. But
one THC cartridge, right? And then they charged her with like drug smuggling, right, setting up a criminal empire or whatever.
Chanchad Mina said, Grant just dropped an article. Otherwise, there's a bunch. Painting with a very broad brush. The USMNT of the past couple cycles have dominated the physically and psychologically, but cannot match the technical and tactical of current Europeans, which it seems odd that we can't get there from a technical level, given how good the team is. It's not like they can't be that far apart, in my opinion. I mean, we have the best team in the world. It can't be that difficult to get there.
I think honestly, my feeling is it's like the rise and fall of empires. Is you
Sure.
rise by having like new technology or an innovative approach, and that spreads. But then eventually, people figure out how to counteract that approach and develop their own, and then those people create their own empire. And it does seem like U.S. soccer, on the women's side for so long, has prioritized a lot of the same things that the men's side did, and I think to their own detriment on occasion. It's physicality, it's college soccer, which means heavy recruitment, which means I think they've changed the laws to allow this, but you had like middle schoolers committing to play for colleges. Like it was about sort of bringing through talent to make your team win now, but not necessarily develop players the way you need them to. And as we've already said, there was another comment in there about like somebody said that like funding women's soccer is a rounding error. Forgive me, I can't find that one in there right now. But again, I think that might have been Kim McCauley who talked about that, about how just the budgets of these teams are so limited that if you funded them and gave them a way to have an academy that built players to play a cohesive style of soccer, you're going to make better players. But that hasn't really been the case in the U.S. It just has been the case that nobody has been able to catch up yet because it's been so underfunded and not really cared about. And the FIFA president talks about how we need to have them wearing shorter shorts and is making sexist comments while handing out the Ballon d'Or. Like it doesn't really help grow the game. And I think that's changing. And again, I think if you're an NWSL executive, if you're some people at US Soccer, you're probably a little bit nervous about the way things are going. Because I do think there's going to come a time when the US is not, if not struggling to qualify for a World Cup, then it's less of an, okay, we're going to get to the World Cup, but how's the knockout round going to go? There will come a time when we're worried about the group stage, and maybe we're worried about qualification on top of that.
Right. It's only a matter of time. And that question was from Trish Murphy about the rounding error as well. Okay. So,
thanks, Trish.